In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data. So we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my home office, back in the hills of Western New York. My name is Mark Anthony Arena, and this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today. It is the final day of 2025, so I want to say happy holidays and prosperous new year to all of you. And we continue to pray for Ukraine and any other war-torn areas in the world. So I want to start this. We're going to do a teaching episode today, just going through some more articles, right? I've got the backlog, and we're going to go through a whole pile of articles here really quickly and give a little summary. But I want to start out by giving a shout out to listeners Matt and Cindy, who sent me podcaster socks for Christmas. And they are so neat. It's InnoBeta brand. And I'll tell you what I really love about them, aside from the fact that they have little microphones and antennas on them and radios, is that instead of those annoying little plastic things that I don't even know how they even insert them through the sock, instead of those things that you have to rip out, there were just little metal clips. They were almost like paper clips. And it was so nice because they were much easier to remove than ripping those plastic things and stretching your clothing. But it's just probably a lot more environmentally friendly than the plastic ones. So I got these little metal paper clips. I'm going to reuse them. And that, I think, was a pretty cool touch. So, yeah, I am wearing the socks right now so we can do this episode. All right, folks, let's catch up on the news. Here's something. This is actually a recent one that someone sent me here. And it says, "We let AI run our office vending machine. It lost hundreds of dollars." And this is from the Wall Street Journal, December of 2025. Anthropic's Claude ran a snack operation in our Wall Street Journal newsroom. It gave away a free PlayStation, ordered a live fish, and taught us lessons about the future of AI agents. So I guess what happened was they were copying... the people here were copying the idea from the office of Claude itself. So this Anthropic organization that made Claude, the AI thing, they did it themselves. And apparently the Wall Street Journal didn't bother to read that article, because there was an article a while back, a few months ago, that I read where Claude was put in charge of its own company as far as the snack machines. And that goes to show it can't even manage the snack machines, no less anything important and consequential. So the Claude, when Anthropic put Claude in charge of its own snack machines, it started fighting with the people, with the employees, and giving things away. And one employee tried to manipulate it into giving him snacks. So Claude called the FBI, or emailed, I think it was called, possibly emailed, and said, "I want to report some fraud here." And then it told the FBI, "When you arrive in the building, I'll greet you there wearing a suit and a red tie," or something really wild. All right, so this AI stuff, as well as its creators, are babies who need to be raised, all right? So Wall Street Journal obviously didn't see what happened there when Anthropic used Claude itself. So they went ahead and did that. And didn't see the disastrous results. All right, next one. This is January 2022. CFO Journal, accounting firms scoop up virtual land in the Metaverse. PricewaterhouseCoopers and Prager Metis made acquisitions last month to begin operating in the Metaverse. All right, so the Metaverse is and was a fad that went nowhere, luckily, thanks be to God, and these folks were just trying to jump in prematurely. I could see making a little investment, like a penny stock, right, where you want to get a little foothold, a little investment in something, but to jump in to a fad head first, I don't think is good in retrospect. Again, I read these articles, these 3-year-old articles here, not just because I have OCD and want to go exactly through my list, but also to show you from the perspective of looking back at it how foolish some of this stuff is, okay? Accounting firms are following the example set by other companies to launch operations in the Metaverse, a digital space where players simulate real-life activities from shopping to gaming to business consulting. Okay, meta just means something inside of something else, like a matryoshka, right? So universe inside of a universe. Businesses across industries including real estate, technology, cryptocurrency have been purchasing digital land on platforms such as Decentraland and The Sandbox. Executives have started drafting business plans for operating in those virtual worlds, which are typically conceived by video game developers. That's hilarious. These executives have nothing to do besides whip up business plans for how to operate in these cyber things. Like, right? It's all fakery, right? It's all just fakery. And that's all it is. They're not creating or producing anything useful, okay? And again, websites are garbage enough, right? You have to log into websites 900 times and nothing works. Then you have to have a battle against that company on Facebook or Instagram just to get attention to raise attention to your problem. And now they're going to add this, right? Again, it's just more Jenga. It's more House of Cards. It's more garbage you and I are going to have to deal with because these people, just like the Claude snack machine, have no judgment and no self-control. Prager Metis International, LLC, New York-based accounting firm, said it opened a virtual 3-story property on a site. Ooh, 3-story property, right? It's that old-fashioned, impressive nature. On a site it bought for nearly $35,000 in late December. What? $35,000 to buy a fake piece of digital real estate in a 3D game? What? The firm, which operates 23 physical offices in the US and Europe and Asia, made its purchase on the Decentraland platform in partnership with another firm. Alright, look, at least they're using the Decentraland, which is a decentralized platform, right? And I've said this before, if you are going to go into this metaverse, then you might as well do it on one that's not centrally controlled, right? The whole point of Facebook renaming itself, right? It's a publicity stunt. They're renaming themselves to Meta because they're they're going all in on this metaverse. But the Facebook-controlled metaverse, right? They're all several metaverses, right? They're just 3D games, basically, that are owned by somebody. All right, so the Facebook metaverse, Facebook wants to control everything, right? As if they don't control enough of your life. So Facebook wants to control their own metaverse, and they want you to participate in their own ultra-proprietary metaverse. Whereas at least with Decentraland, it's a decentralized thing, right? Or at least, I don't know anything about Sandbox, but it's probably the same idea. And even Second Life, right? The developers of Second Life are relatively hands-off. And guess what? If you want something to succeed, laissez-faire is the only way to go, right? Facebook will strangle itself, mark my words, with their metaverse because it's ultra proprietary and no one's going to want to put up with it, right? A few fad catchers and bandwagon people will try to jump on, but it ain't going to work. Facebook will sink itself with its own weight. All right. And as my dad would say, how stupid. All right. So meanwhile, in another metaverse, right? This one is January 2022, and my friend James sent this in to me. And he was a prior guest on the show, James Coffin. So he sent me this article from MSN. It says, a woman claimed she was virtually groped by a gang of male avatars in Meta's Metaverse, report says. And there was a lady who was 43 and alleged she was verbally harassed by 3 or 4 male avatars within a minute of joining Meta's Horizon Venues, which is some kind of a thing inside the Metaverse. So, meanwhile, in the Metaverse, that's what's actually happening. All right? A couple more here. Hope y'all are liking this new headline news style here. We're going to get through these. I figure, so if we are 3 years behind, that's 36 months, right? If I can read a month's worth of articles in a week, then it'll take us about 36 weeks to get caught up. So who knows, we might actually do this within the year. And that leaves room for me to pepper in some articles. Some interviews. All right. Here's one from the BBC, and this is March of 21. Drunk robot vacuums spark complaints from owners. Owners of Roomba robot vacuums have complained that devices appear drunk following a software update. The machines are spinning around, constantly recharging or not charging at all, and moving in strange directions. The maker, iRobot, has acknowledged its update has caused problems. A fix would take several weeks, and the firm is asking those affected to share their serial numbers so it can remove the most recent update. Again, you can't even remove an update attack. There's no keyboard and mouse and monitor on these things, right? And just like the Apple products, you're not allowed to remove update attacks even if there is a keyboard and mouse and monitor, right? These are forced attacks that destroy, and then you are at the factory's mercy if they deem it worthy to remove the attack. It's a vacuum, folks. It doesn't need an update attack. It goes around the path of your house. If it bumps into something, it keeps going. It's spinning around and bumping into furniture. It's moving around in weird patterns, and they're traveling diagonally away from the charging dock, and they're recharging 5 times while cleaning one room. Now, this is interesting, because normally, right, every article has to tap a cybersecurity expert, and usually the cyber joker says, you should do updates, and brush your teeth, and take your vitamins, and do updates, because that's what you were told to do, and do a virus scan, right? They're always the same. They might as well just copy and paste the same 2 sentences, right? Do updates and do a virus scan. Most of the time, that's what these P-brains quote. But this one's pretty cool. This article talks to Ken Monroe, a cybersecurity expert, and Ken says, updates usually add new features or fix bugs in smart products, but they don't always go to plan, though, sometimes introducing new bugs. Thank you. It's worth remembering that you're relying on the manufacturer to continue to support your smart thing, and are your devices ever truly yours? Thank you. I think I want to use that quote in my book. That's fantastic. Thank you, Ken. All right, another one here from the BBC. And this is definitely another meanwhile thing, okay? So I must have read that particular BBC article, and then the ADD took over when I saw a distracting related article, so I clicked on that. All right, so meanwhile, on the BBC, and this is from January of 22, Stanwyck man uses 72-year-old toaster every day. It was manufactured in December of 49 and given to his parents as a wedding present. And it only needs repairing once every 6 or 7 years. Huh, interesting. It doesn't get drunk and roll around the house. It just works. A few more here. Here's a silly one. HowToGeek.com. Spread the word, Ninite is the only safe place to get Windows freeware. Of course, safe freeware is available elsewhere online, but there's no real trustworthy centralized source of the stuff. Download sites are uniformly terrible these days, and even good old SourceForge is now bundling junkware. So you download Ninite and just check off the programs you want, and then click install. So you have to download a Windows program first called Ninite. You can't just download it from any machine. And then it does the work for you. You tell it what programs you want, and then it will automatically download each program you selected and installs it in the background without any annoying choices and automatically declining any toolbars, okay? And you notice by the tone of my voice I'm about to rip this apart, right? Y'all know me by now, huh? It'll check for updated versions of the programs you choose and install them automatically. And you can rerun it once a week in case you want chaos and update attacks, right? All right, look. So, as usual, it's all about control. My industry thinks, and the author's totally right that if you go on the Googles and type in certain free software or whatever, you're going to go into a minefield. You're going to land into a place that's going to dangle the software in front of you like Softonic, right? They're one of the most horrible purveyors of software that's been poisoned by toolbars, right? But anyway, as usual, my industry's answer is control. Just trust Ninite and they'll do everything for you and we'll control you. You don't need annoying choices. We'll do everything for you, right? So that's always the case. Look, Ninite is okay if you want to use it, but you don't have to run it every day and get updates, all right? What you really should do is use your own good human sense, all right? I like a site called Major Geeks, but no matter where you download something, just pay attention when you install something. If you notice that it's not the official installer, right? Like years ago, you'd type in Firefox on Google, and it would be like firefox-browser-installer.com. And it's obviously not the real thing. And then in microscope, it'll say like, yeah, you can probably click here and maybe download it. And then in microscopic letters, it says not the official site. And they actually poison it and bundle it with toolbars, okay? So use your own human judgment. Make sure you're at the official site of anything you're doing, first of all. Second of all, when you're installing something, be sure to uncheck everything. Not just toolbars, but also stupidity from the publisher itself, right? When you install Firefox, they beg you with 40,000 billion trillion pop-ups. You need to sign up for Firefox bookmarks. You need to sign up for Firefox account. You need to do this and that. And then they show people like, they show some lady in a welding shop for no reason. And that's that. So that's that story. Okay. I don't know about you folks, but I am loving this new format. We're blazing through all this stuff, and I don't feel so laden anymore, right? I got rid of my house. I'm getting rid of my debt. I'm getting rid of all this backlog. We're getting rid of everything, folks. We're going to be free and fresh and clear for the new year. And by the way, speaking of clearing your conscience, come to think of it, if you, for some reason, like me and my humor, and you want to hear what I'm like when I'm not raging about technology, then check out the Flyover Plates podcast. We just did an episode the other day where we cleared our consciences and cleansed our palates for 2025 and finished off the year with a surprise holiday episode. So check out Flyover Plates. It's a comedy podcast that I co-host, and it's all about food. All right. So, and also check out Dom Geneva's No Nonsense Roundtable. I was a guest this morning on that show, so that episode will come out pretty soon. And when I met him about a year ago, he called me up and he said, "You sound so much like me, it's not even funny, and your writing style is so similar to mine." He's a retired car dealer who always did the right thing and always did right by people and saw recurring loyalty as opposed to just a drive-by, grab a client, screw him over, and move on to the next, right? So in his retirement, he wrote a book to protect people against scummy car dealers, and it's called Don't Be Taken for a Ride. So I was a guest on his show a few times over the past year, so check him out, and I hope to do a lot more on his show in the future. Once I complete my next book, I want to do little 5-minute video tech tips that I will plop onto his show and plop onto my own social media. All right, folks, having fun? Excuse me, here we go. Finance.yahoo.com. This was the end of 2021. Why Michael Dell worries about opportunity for everyone amid automation. I love Michael Dell because not only are his products relatively calm and well-made, they're reliable, and they don't have a lot of stupidity on them, but also as a person, he's the same way. He doesn't like the bandwagons, he doesn't start drooling about AI and mindlessly worshiping whatever trend is out there, right? He's very calm, cool, and collected, and that's what I love about him. So he, unlike a lot of these reckless, arrogant slobs, he actually cares about the future of humanity. So instead of actively trying to destroy humanity like most of the other tech giants and titans are doing, he worries about us. And he says, The U.S. economy added a sluggish 194,000 jobs in September of 21, and the share of working age people on the job moved a little, suggesting that millions of Americans remain on the sidelines. Another reason, a lack of available workers with the skills necessary to fill those open positions. Michael Dell says automation will exacerbate that mismatch between the skills required by the workforce and the ones on offer from people seeking employment. A trend that risks diminishing opportunity for everyone, he says. He called for retraining programs that will help workers adapt to the shifting job landscape. We have a lot of people that are not participating in the economy, he says. Right? 99% of New Yorkers stay home and smoke because the government just gives them the money here, so they can do that. And it's sad to say, but they're helpless in the face of all this technology and automation, right? 99% of people have no clue what their passwords are, and they're expected to go off and work somewhere. And the 12 or 13 people who do work are expected to change their passwords every 30 days because that was supposed to protect them. So they're totally overwhelmed, and 99% of their workday is spent resetting their passwords. And it turns out resetting your passwords more often is actually the least safe thing you can possibly do. But unfortunately, the bearded tyrants who are in control of these organizations haven't had training since 1991. Okay, let's get back here and back up out of that tangent. Between 400 and 800 million people worldwide could be displaced by automation and need to find new jobs by 2030. Okay, it's going to be scary, folks. AI and automation are going to put a lot of people out of a job, and no one's doing a thing aside from New York, which just gives everyone free money and then taxes the 12 people who work. All right? And that's why, as much as I don't want to see this, that's why I personally decided to invest in automation kind of companies, because it's coming fast and it's going to hit everyone, and at the very least I should invest in some automation companies. Look, automation isn't innately evil. That's one thing I won't say is innately evil, whereas I believe AI is innately evil. Okay? But automation is just robots building things in factories. So that's why I'm not afraid to invest in it. But anyway, while some of the founders of tech giants are among the world's richest people, their technological advances have not delivered comparable income gains for workers. What did I say here, right? They're ruining society and pillaging and plundering. The classic robber barons, right? Since the you see how I have a fair and balanced view of everything, folks? Since the 1970s, technology has helped enable productivity growth of 61.8%, while hourly pay has risen just 17.5%. That's interesting, right? Again, and we're all working more, and we're all more stressed than ever before. Okay, technology makes everything worse, and I have a thing about that in my forthcoming book, right? There's a chapter called The False Promise of Technology, and it starts out with a quote from Bishop Sheen, and he talks about how all the world wars are actually becoming more and more frequent, and he finishes it by saying, hardly progress. All right. World Economic Forum found in 2016 that technology had already worsened inequality, right? I'm going to have to use that in a quote in that chapter. 100 years ago, most people could do pretty much every job that there was, Michael Dell says. But not anymore, right? So I think creating more skills, lots of people are concerned about it, and I think for good reason, okay? That's why all of you should become computer exorcists, right? Please tell any young people you know that I will give them training on how to deal with this massive morass of machines that are out there just saying bad password, and then the scumbags at the big box store are told to read a script that says buy a new computer. In January, House Representative Bobby Scott introduced the Relaunching America's Workforce Act, which includes billions in spending on career training programs for unemployed people. Right? I actually want to reach out to Bobby's office and tell him about the Become a Computer Exorcist program. All right? So look, in stark contrast to these tech titans who are out there destroying the world and what do they say, breaking things and moving fast and all that, in stark contrast to that, Michael and his wife Susan have pledged $6.25 billion to the Trump Savings Account program. to help disadvantaged people start a savings account so they have a future. And that's true voluntary charity, and I applaud them greatly. So, a couple more here, and this one's very interesting, and this comes from listeners Matt and Cindy, and WallStreetJournal.com. Sony to buy video game maker Bungie in a $3.6 billion deal. This was January of 22. Bungie is the studio that created Destiny and Halo. And those are beloved video games. I've never played Destiny, but I'm a huge, huge Halo fan. And if I haven't said this on the air before, much of my college time was spent playing Halo with my roommates and all of our friends. We would have... So the Xbox was Microsoft's first video game console, and they did a phenomenal job because in the rare cases where Microsoft has to compete with somebody, they actually show up and they bring quality. And the Xbox was a beautiful machine, as well as the successor, the Xbox 360. The newer ones, though, are confusing garbage that are all cloud controlled, so no one should use them. But anyway, the original Xbox in college was the first thing that was networkable, right? I think the PlayStation might have also had a network jack, actually, but I don't remember doing any multiplayer with that. But with the Xboxes, you could play Halo with up to 16 people. So we had 4 Xboxes, and each one had 4 controllers. And those Xboxes were all plugged into our router in our apartment. So 4 times 4 is 16. We had 16 people playing Halo against each other. It was absolutely glorious. So get this. Sony, which is Microsoft's rival in the video game world, is going to buy Bungie for $3.6 billion. Or they did in 2022, okay? So I don't know why Bungie broke free from Microsoft, because Microsoft bought Bungie when they were in the process of making Halo, and when Microsoft was in the process of making Xbox. They said, hey, here's an up-and-coming game called Halo. We should buy their studio, and that'll be our release title, as they call it, right? That'll be the game that we release with our console. And it certainly proved to be a classic, right? Just like Mario and Sonic, those were the release characters and release titles and release franchises, and those became instant classics, right? Not just because they were bundled with every console, but because they were good. They were simple games that were immediately lovable. All right. So I don't understand how, when Microsoft bought Bungie, I don't understand how Bungie broke free, okay? The deal comes after Microsoft said earlier that they're going to buy video game giant Activision Blizzard. So that's interesting because it really... Activision Blizzard is the creator of a game called World of Warcraft, and it does run on Windows, so it's sort of relevant to Microsoft, but it ruins people's lives, okay? World of Warcraft, we all know a friend who's been sucked into World of Warcraft and no longer pays attention to their real life. So leave it to Microsoft, as always, to go a step backwards. So here's what happened. A couple articles here, and what I'm going to do when I read an article like this, I'll bring you an update, right? So I've got a couple updated articles here with that Bungie saga. And this is from Mara Station, and it's from August of 2025. Goodbye to Bungie's independence. The creators of Halo and Destiny will join PlayStation Studios. All right, so when Sony bought Bungie back in 22, the respective press releases implied that the studio would retain its independence, right? That's always the goal, right? If you buy an organization, please let them do what they do best. If you like what they're doing, let them do what they do best. Leave them alone, right? And case in point was Volvo and Saab, right? GM bought Saab and immediately destroyed them and ripped them to shreds, whereas Geely bought Volvo, and Li Shifu, who was the owner, said, stay with what you're doing. I'm not going to change you. Keep doing what you do best. And that's why he succeeded. All right? And that's why they're still around. So apparently, for the first couple of years, Sony let Bungie do whatever they want. And now they decided to swallow them into the company, right? So they're taking Bungie and they're going to digest them and integrate them fully into Sony video game studios. And apparently there is a lot of employee unrest now, okay? And Lin Tao, who's Sony's CFO, said, at the time of acquisition, we were offering a very independent environment. So that was one way of thinking. However, we've gone through some structural reform, and this independence will get lighter. I love how you put it like that. So that was one way of thinking, and we're going to go ahead and not do that. And now your independence will be lighter. Yes, you're going to have less independence. Okay, final article, another update on this. This is October of 2025, and it's from IGN, which is a video game publication. Halo Project Update 2025, everything announced. Halo Studios announced that its previously teased new project is Halo Combat Evolved Remake is going to be called Halo Campaign Evolved. And it's coming to the PC, to the Xbox and all its weird iterations, and yes, even Sony PlayStation 5. All right, hang on a second here. So apparently, and I figured this out, so Microsoft ditched Bungie for whatever reason a while back. I think it was around the time they made Halo 4, maybe, because, I mean, Halo 3 was great, Halo 3 ODST was great, Halo Reach was great, but then Halo 4 really noticeably fell off a cliff. It was still cool, but it wasn't as good as the prior releases. And, I mean, the music was worse because the original composer, I think his name was Martin O'Donnell, he was gone. And the whole team was just... And at the end of the game, they said, hey, we thank our predecessors and all that. And that was cool. But I guess what happened was Microsoft ditched Bungie, but they kept 343 Industries, which was responsible for Halo, and renamed the whole thing Halo Studios. Okay. So I don't know why all that happened. They ditched Bungie and let them float off on their own. And then, of course, Bungie was gobbled by Sony, as we just said. But then they kept Halo Studios. So that's pretty cool. I'm glad they did that. But yeah, Halo just ain't Halo anymore. I did buy Halo 5, but I haven't had a chance to play it yet because I don't have this week's Xbox console, so I'm going to play it at my nephew's house. Anyway, a remake of the original Halo. So again, the original was Halo Combat Evolved. The new one is called Halo Campaign Evolved. The remake of the original Halo, news that it's coming to PS5 isn't much of a surprise, but it is a sign that Xbox's relationship with Sony may just be getting started. So that's really interesting, folks. And since it's still holiday break here, I'm going to go off and play some video games and sign off. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. And again, prosperous New Year. Thank you so much for listening. Please tell your friends about the show. thecomputerexorcist.com if you want to buy my books, and if you want to tell someone about the training I offer to give them modern training to beat the pants off of these 1991 jokers out there. All right, thanks so much. Talk to you next year.